Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you very much indeed. It's a pleasure to see CPAC in what we used to call Great Britain. So well done, Liz, for getting this on. I've spoken at over 10 CPACs in America. I've even been to CPAC in Australia. And I know we've got some very distinguished guests here today from all over the world. So I'd like to say welcome to Great Britain, but I have to really say welcome to Broken Britain, because we are in something of a mess. In fact, I'd go further and say we're actually engaged in a battle for the very soul of our nation, to define what we actually are, what we stand for, what our values are, because they're under attack in just the most astonishing and extraordinary way. But it's okay, because on Monday, he even wore a tie today. I was most surprised, I must say. On Monday, we'll have a new Prime Minister. Our 7th Prime Minister in 10 years. And we used to laugh at the Italians. He comes in with absolutely no mandate of any kind at all. None. He says he wants to change the direction of politics in the most fundamental way for 40 years, because everything he says that is wrong in Britain is because of what happened in the 1980s. That is 40 years ago. And I watched his acceptance speech earlier on today, and I have to say, I find the whole thing utterly vacuous. He is the great chameleon of British politics, capable of being all things to all people. But the big shtick is all about power. It's all about power. He says in the 1980s, power drained away from the people, and capitalist interests took away the economic good of the people. So the plan is simple. Create lots of mayors all over the country and all will be well. Power draining away. I'll tell you how power drained away. Power drained away when we joined the European Economic Community, which then became a European Union. And with that, we lost the sovereignty of our own parliament, the ability to make our own laws. Andy Burnham, bringing back power. I've done more than any individual in British history to bring power back to this country and to its people. But it's another Prime Minister. He'll lead a cabinet, and we don't yet know who the Chancellor is going to be. Is it going to be Red Ed? But no, the markets think Shabana Mahmood would be much better. But once again, we'll get a Chancellor of the Exchequer who has never, ever worked in private business, nor have any of the rest of the Cabinet. Is it any wonder that our economy is in the depths of the trouble that it is? And we don't yet know who the Cabinet are going to be, but we do know that Matthew McGregor has been appointed as his chief political advisor, formerly of Hope Not Hate, who seem to masquerade as a charity and yet directly involve themselves in election, a man who is an ardent, fanatical Remainer, who says that the American president has neo-fascist tendencies and has said very many disobliging things about me, although that doesn't make him alone, does it? What are we going to get? Are we going to get a man of conviction? Are we going to get a man who's in politics because he really believes in some basic fundamental principles? Well, I knew that Starmer was a dud. I knew Starmer was a dud the day after the last general election, the 5th of July, 2024. There was the Prime Minister in the sunshine in Downing Street at 11 a.m. giving a victory speech that he'd known for at least a year he was going to have to give. It was obvious he was going to win. And I knew that Starmer was a dud because he looked down at his notes in the course of 9 minutes, as I've said before, like a pigeon in Trafalgar Square. He looked down at his notes 166 times in 9 minutes. And I knew this was not a conviction politician, but somebody being given a script to read out. But it's okay, because now we've got Andy. Who in his speech today, albeit a longer one than 9 minutes, how many times did Andy Burnham look down at his notes in that speech this morning? 266. Now, I put it to you that if a political leader is incapable of standing before an audience and stringing a couple of sentences together, they might be doing the job more out of personal ambition than out of conviction and belief in the country. And let me tell you something. I don't need to be in politics. There are many, many other careers I could be pursuing. But I'm doing this not because I want rank, title, or position. I'm doing this because I fear this great country that we love, this great country that those that went before us laid down such incredible sacrifice so that we could be a free, independent democracy who have our arguments in public, have our disagreements, but respect the right of the other person to have a different point of view. I can see this country, we are going down the drain. Britain is broken. We have to wake up to that fact, acknowledge the extent of the illness, and until we do that, we'll never be able to put the right cures in place. I'm doing this because I believe in Britain. I'm doing this because I believe we can turn this around and get this country back on the right track. Now, the only certainty with Burnham is we're going to get more of the same. But they'll go further to the left than they already are. Taxes are going to rise. And there's talk, of course, of property taxes, which will collapse the housing market, especially in London and the South East, but it'll do great damage elsewhere in the country. Top rate tax, I've no doubt, will go up. And all of these things are happening for a man that has no mandate whatsoever. On immigration, he's never shown the slightest concern about what's going on. And of course, do we think Andy Burnham will take us out of the ECHR so we're back fully in control of our borders? Not a hope in hell. Debt. I mean, Rachel from accounts is on the way out. I mean, thank God for that. She cried again, didn't she? It's brilliant, that. That was Lee Anderson, my colleague Lee Anderson, who branded her Rachel from accounts, and it stuck. Do you know our national debt is rising faster than any country in the world apart from Botswana? Do you ever hear it talked about? Is there ever any proper debate about the fact that in 14 years of Conservative government, the national debt rose by 2.5 times and is now exploding away, with welfare payments now in excess of income tax receipts? Nothing will get better under Andy Burnham, but the real key, I'm going to come back to it, is he wasn't elected on the 2024 manifesto. He says he wants to have the biggest change of direction in politics in 40 years. Outside of 25,000 voters in Makerfield, he has literally no mandate for this at all in what is supposed to be one of the world's best and oldest and most functioning democracies. And frankly, I think that the British public have had enough of this game of musical chairs that is taking place in Downing Street. The only good and decent and right thing to do, given where we are, with a new Prime Minister coming in, that none of you have had the opportunity to vote for or against, is there must be an immediate general election so the country can decide the future. But that is part of this bigger picture that I touched on earlier, that I genuinely believe we are engaged in a battle for the soul of our nation. On the one hand, we have the political class, or perhaps more accurately, we should call them the Uniparty, because they pretty much agree when they're in government on everything. They, with their friends in the media and increasingly loud activist groups that represent tiny minority interests, but if you dare to criticise them in any way at all, you will no doubt be accused of hate speech and possibly get the Lucy Connolly style, well, and Alison Pearson, knock at the door. No, these people literally hate our country. And on the other side of the debate, you've got those of us who actually believe that family, community and country and decency and democracy and free speech and putting the national interest first and understanding that if you don't control your borders, you're not in control of your country. And that is what Reform UK has done and has spoken to over the course of the last 2 years. We speak to that constituency of people. Do you know there are still people in Britain who get up in the morning and go to work? Can you believe it? Incredible, isn't it? I thought everybody was on benefits. No, our voters work or have worked, contribute to society, believe in the basic values of our society. And I would say to you, I honestly would say to you, that what we've done in the last 2 years is to spark an extraordinary political revolution, because we're prepared to talk about the things that matter. And there's one issue, and here we are in London, the capital city, where men no longer feel safe wearing watches walking down our most famous streets, where women in the middle of the day dare not wear jewellery. But there is no proper debate about the total collapse of law and order, the societal decline that it's led to. And on that note, I'm very, very pleased to say that within the last 90 minutes I've learnt that Colin Sutton, who is Britain's most famous living detective, got elected as Police and Crime Commissioner for Reform UK for Norfolk. And in that so-called battle for who controls the centre-right vote in this country, I can tell you in Norfolk, with Colin as our candidate, we got more votes than the Conservatives and Restore added up together. We are the dominant force of centre-right politics in Britain. And it is remarkable, isn't it? Because this doesn't happen, does it? You know, for 100 years, it was the Liberals versus the Tories. Since World War I, it has been Labour versus the Conservatives. Almost, we've done our 10 years. Off you go, old chap, it's your turn. Almost like a club. And I'm sorry, but everything Kemi Badenoch now says she stands for is the complete and absolute opposite of what they did whilst they were in government. And one or two Americans who are here today, who I've spoken to earlier, in particular the Schlapps, without whom CPAC would not be what it is. So please acknowledge them. People are quite shocked by what they see in parts of London. Well, I don't believe the last Conservative government can ever be forgiven for what they did. The Boris wave let in 3.8 million people, of whom only 17% came on work permits. Not only is this going to be at a huge economic cost to social services for many, many decades to come, but literally changing the landscape, changing the atmosphere, frankly, making large parts of our country totally unrecognisable. And I say that as somebody from a country who are amongst the most open-minded in the world. Our links with the Commonwealth, our links through 2 world wars with people from many nations and many religions and many races. We've always been very, very tolerant people. But we've always worked on the basis that those that came to settle here did so because they actually liked us and believed in our values. And now the cowardice of the establishment is such that we allow people openly to say that we should now submit our way of life and our values to their way of life and their values. Well, I'm sorry, but the answer is no, nay, never. We will not do this. So I'm proud of what we've done. We've built the biggest party by membership in the country. We've got over 2,500 councillors elected. We are running 33 local authorities across the country. We've managed to raise more money last year than any other political party. And we are genuinely doing everything we can to get ready to fight that next general election, whenever it begins, and to win it. And I believe we can win it. I believe an historic upset is on the cards. I believe the British people have simply had enough of weak, gutless, spineless leadership that cares more about opinion in the international community than it cares about the collective good of the people living in this country. I really, really do. And this political revolution, of course, has happened in America. It's happening in Australia as we speak. Pauline, amazing. Amazing what you've done to get to the top of the opinion polls. Phenomenal. In Italy, we have a conservative-minded Prime Minister who's about to become the longest-serving Prime Minister in Italy since World War II. And in France and elsewhere, there is a big change. But the big moment of this year was May the 7th. May the 7th were our equivalent of the midterms. The Scottish Parliament up for election, the Welsh Parliament up for election, huge numbers of seats across England up for local council elections. And despite the Labour government, supported by the Conservatives, attempting in some cases for the second year in a row to deny people the right to vote, even though they were paying their council tax, Reform fought a legal action against the government and won back the right to vote for 5 million people. We believe in democracy. We really do. And the results were incredible. The opposition in Scotland and Wales from nothing. In East Anglia, we're on the edge of it now, from Essex, Suffolk, Norfolk, counties that have been Tory for a couple of hundred years. We wiped out the Conservatives. And in the north of England, in areas that Labour has literally dominated since 1918, the Sunderlands, places like that. We literally wiped out the Labour Party. I knew on May the 8th we'd got rid of Keir Starmer. And I felt good about that, I've got to tell you. But this huge success went against the Westminster narrative, which was, don't worry about reform, they'll implode. They'll fall to pieces. They'll descend into being a complete disaster zone. I think on May the 8th they realised that reform is not going away. And so they decided that if they couldn't beat us by fair means, they would try to beat us by foul means. And by the way, I am big enough and ugly enough, and I've been in this game long enough to take stick, to take abuse, to be criticised. We know that is part of the rough and tumble of being in politics. But the coordinated pile-on, helped, of course, by leaks of confidential banking information from state authorities in this country, the extent of the pile-on, the extent of the untruths that have been written, the way that myself and many of my colleagues have been not criticised, but frankly demonised, dehumanised in the most extraordinary way. And I found myself literally, by the way, Americans will remember this playbook, won't they? This happened in America with lawfare being used and many, many other things. And I found myself and my colleagues being adjudged to be guilty of virtually everything, every single day. So I thought, you know what? I don't see why Sky News should be my judges. I don't see why the Times of London, particularly after they published a picture of the house in which my daughter lives, which I think is utterly disgusting at any level, just about the worst thing I've ever seen. I thought, no, I'm not going to do this. So I've taken a punt, because I like a gamble, resigned my seat, put myself up for election again, and on the 13th of August, the people of Clacton can decide whether they back me or whether they back the establishment, and I think they're going to come down on my side. I hope and pray that they do. Yes, let the people decide. Let the people be my judge, not the Westminster elite. Strange thing is that in this Clacton constituency, in 2019, the Conservatives got 31,000 votes, 72% of the vote. 72% the Tories got in Clacton just 7 years ago. And yet they've decided not to field a candidate against me. The same Conservative Party that doesn't want a general election. The same Conservative Party that tried for 2 years in a row to stop Essex County Council elections from going ahead. And the same Conservative Party who don't think this by-election should be going ahead and will not be contesting it. And whatever her words at press conferences, we are up against a uni-party. There is nothing to choose between these two parties. Reform is the first proper alternative getting ready for government in this country that we've had, frankly, for 100 years. And I would say to all of you in the room, if you want change, you've got to vote for change. And if you want change, you have to, as I said earlier, recognise that Britain is broken. Recognise that the patient is very sick. The Tories say Britain's not broken. Well, they have to say that. Otherwise, they'd be admitting that after 14 years of rule, they broke it. Labour say Britain's not broken. Andy thinks create a few mayors here and there and it'll sort itself out. It won't. It simply won't. Now, all of this demonisation and, frankly, incitement and being adjudged to be guilty, which led me to call this by-election, I couldn't have imagined at the time the true horrors of what was about to unfold in that beautiful house just below Haytor on Dartmoor, with its views out, rolling down the hills across the English Channel. Of course, I'm talking about Anne Widdecombe's home, somewhere that I visited. And I think the murder of Anne Widdecombe, and perhaps the reaction to it from some, shows you that we really are in a battle for the soul of our nation. It was an horrific, political, premeditated murder by somebody inspired by a hard-left ideology. Of that, there is no doubt whatsoever. Even if the Devon and Cornwall police seemed to think that it was a burglary gone wrong. It was obvious from the start that it wasn't that. And I knew that, and I said that, and I was proved to be right. Anne's death is an horrendous thing. A truly horrendous thing. She was the most recognised political figure, most recognised female political figure in this country since Margaret Thatcher. She was utterly indomitable. She was truly remarkable. One of the few public figures in modern times who was prepared to stand up strongly for the Christian values that she believed in so very, very much. But she wasn't just a politician. She crossed into the world of celebrity with her appearances on reality TV, her theatre tours around the country, the novels that she wrote. And when she decided to join the Brexit Party, as it was in 2019, and become one of my colleagues in the European Parliament, I can tell you, you could not meet a finer or more principled person, even if, at times, when she disagreed with me, I found her quite terrifying, quite frankly. She never held back. You know, the phone would ring and I'd pick it up and it's Anne here. Oh dear, what have I done now? You know, remarkable woman, but it does get to the battle for the soul of the nation. You know, we saw some really quite prominent and well-known left-wing commentators appearing on television and on social media saying the most awful things about her after her death. I hope and believe that no significant figure on the right of British politics would ever say anything like that if such a horror happened to a prominent Green or left-wing politician. We've got to get back the idea that we fought world wars to be free to disagree, but to respect the right of the other person to have a different opinion to us. And I want this taught in schools. I want it back in our culture. I'll finish with this. Whatever they throw at us, whatever the mainstream media try to do, telling us about a chemie bounce or how wonderful Andy is or whatever, how ghastly we are or whatever it may be, whatever they do to us, reform is a movement more than it's a political party. It's a state of mind. It's an understanding that something fundamentally has to change. It's a belief that we have by 180 degrees to change the direction this country is going in economically, societally. And we will overcome these difficulties. We will overcome these short-term unpleasantnesses. We will overcome these obstacles, and together we'll fight and win that next election and begin something that is vital. Because if we don't, we're going to go bust. If we don't, hundreds of thousands more of our brightest and young best, as they're doing already, will flee our nation and live elsewhere. If we don't, our history, our culture will continue to be traduced throughout the education system and elsewhere. I honestly believe we're less than a decade away from effectively turning in to a third world country. And I will be damned if I'm going to see that. And I'm putting my shoulder to the wheel, and I urge those of you in the audience who have the same sense of urgency that I do about the problems that we face to put your shoulders to the wheel as well. And there is one very valuable thing that history does teach us, which is that this country's been in big trouble before, but it's always got itself out of it. And we're in big trouble now. So I believe we can get ourselves out of this. Do you believe that we can get our country out of this? Do you believe that we can turn this around? Do you believe we can turn this around? Can we do better? Can we do better? We must do better. We've got to do better. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Hello, nice to see you. Very, very good.